Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to our War in the Pacific Let's Play series, and we're doing this a little bit differently. We're doing a late night live stream. This is going to be my first look at the combat results, and then we're going to play through the turn. I may make a few minor modifications after the video to kind of tweak things or whatnot before I send the turn over XTRG's way, but essentially we're going to play through a turn here tonight. I don't anticipate it being a really long turn, but we'll see how the how the combat results go. I have a lot of things already in motion, so I don't think I need to do like 5 hours or 6 hours or whatever he's doing now worth of streams like XTRG. Honestly, an hour and a half might be enough to suit my purposes, but we'll see. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump in and play through our result. And thanks for the bits there, J Street. Alright, so here we are. We're into January 8th. It is the combat result of January 8th, 1942. The orders that we're going to be issuing are going to be the combat orders for January 9th. So you can see here that Davo's being occupied in the Philippines. The recon phase has begun. The night recon phase has begun. We'll begin the submarine phase here in just a moment. The naval movement phase. You can see here American submarine, the SS Cuttlefish, hitting a Japanese armed merchant cruiser off the coast of Truk. All right, torpedoes worked. Only one hit, unfortunately, but nonetheless, it looks like she was carrying some troops. Did some damage. I doubt it sinks her. She's just off the coast of Truk. She'll get into port and get repaired, but at least it'll put a little bit of a dent and gives us a couple of victory points with the destruction of a Japanese infantry squad. That's a good start to the turn, I think. Let's see how things go from here. Yeah, the Torp gods must be smiling on me if the Mark 14 worked there. That's a good omen for the turn. Meanwhile, he's continuing his landings on Comac on the northern coast of New Caledonia. We do have an Indian brigade there. We don't have a ton of supply. I'm deliberately not attacking because, frankly, I don't have enough supply to maintain an attack for more than one turn. And I'm going to lose casualties if I attack, and frankly, I can't afford that. So what I'm really doing is just kind of sitting back and waiting for him to attack. We have a very small level of fortifications. We're hoping maybe we can build that up to 2 before he decides to launch an attack, and really just delaying him from taking Comac as long as possible. The one thing that plays into our hands here in New Caledonia is both Comac and Nomaya, while they can be built into substantial airfields, are both very small at the moment. And we have a strong force on Nomaya, so if he brings a division or something, we'll get overrun pretty quick. But at the end of the day, it's about making him divert as much resources and much time into these operations as possible, because honestly, New Caledonia, while it does threaten the western coast of Australia, doesn't do a whole lot to changing the situation in Australia. I guess it could act as a base of invasion for the Australian island if he's going to go that route, but until he knocks out Bataan and Singapore, I can't imagine how he'd have sufficient land forces to make that kind of a play. So that's probably several months away, and we can take precautions against that ahead of that occurring. Alright, Japanese submarine I-20 launches torpedoes against cargo ship here off the coast of San Diego. The torpedoes miss. By the way, guys, let me know if the audio is okay. It actually won't cut the supply lines, J Street. I can move far enough south. New Caledonia is still out of range of New Zealand, so we can just divert convoys a couple of hexes south and they'll actually be fine. If he took Fiji, that would be more detrimental to our supply situation via Australia and New Zealand than if he takes New Caledonia, to be honest. And frankly, if he wants to try and bomb Australia from New Caledonia or go after convoys further south, he's welcome to, because at the end of the day, he's going to wear his bomber crews out. He's going to lose a ton of ops losses, and he's going to get ravaged by any fighter defense that we have, because he's going to be operating on extended ranges without torpedoes. Extended range means high level of operational losses, high level of fatigue, and makes them very susceptible to interceptors. Okay, so he's bombing Wencao here on the eastern Chinese coast with quite a few Sally bombers. We thought we knocked out a large percentage of his Sallies, but apparently he's got at least 50 here, and I think they're flying off the island of Formosa. really a lot of air activity over China. We probably should get more involved with air activity over China, given that we really have, we've got a couple of squadrons of P-40s, and we haven't really done much with them the last few turns. I don't have a lot of good places to base them out of. Like, I can't really base them out of Wangkao, because that base may fall any turn. It may fall this turn. But maybe some of the interior bombing he's doing, where we're able to get a little bit closer, a little bit better range, then maybe that's not a bad idea. No J Street, no spoiling anything that XTRG's planning. I don't want any cheating going on. Alright, moving into the air operations PM phase. Pretty quiet turn so far. A lot of bombing in China, but not much else. Our Dauntlesses on our carriers are spotting Japanese submarines near the carrier task force. The nice thing is with the fog of war, that can often be misleading or incorrect. So it's always something that's kind of fun to kind of try and trace down what's real and what's fake. But so far, our 3-carrier raid, which was going in on Tarawa and did some damage there, has been able to pull out relatively safely. We haven't really gotten to the Japanese submarine line yet, but no one's fired on any torpedoes at our task forces yet either. J Street Jack Tank, to get to India, he's got to go through Burma first. I don't think that's likely until he reduces Singapore. He needs too many soldiers to reduce Singapore before that can really be a feasible option. If he does, he'd just get demolished. Okay. You know, one of the negative things about me streaming here on Twitch and then posting to YouTube is it doesn't carry the chat conversations over, because that'd be cool to be able to like watch the video and see what people are saying as I'm streaming and as they're chatting. But unfortunately, that sort of using 2 platforms doesn't really make that possible. Although I could always direct people to Twitch for the actual video on demand. The SS Pompano's firing torpedoes at a patrol boat. That seems like a bad idea. Wasting torpedoes on a fast... Well, I guess it's not that fast. Some depth charges coming down here on the Pompano by the Okomaru. Critical damage and damage to the engines, taking on water. I never know what to believe here, because often these reports are so fabulously wrong. It'll basically feel like your submarine's getting obliterated and about to die, and then you'll go into the game after the turn and you'll look at the submarine and it'll be like, oh, you got like 6 systems damage. It's like, what? Okay. Alright, it says 6 hits, but it doesn't say critical damage or anything like that. Oh my god, Sturgeon! We've got another submarine firing torpedoes and an anti-submarine craft. This is an SCCH-3, another anti-submarine vessel. This is specifically a sub-chaser, so it's not something we want to be inviting to attack us. I'm going to fast forward through here through the depth charging here. 4 hits, again, no serious damage according to the combat report. We'll see what things look like in the turn. Temporary flotation repairs failing aboard the West Virginia off the U.S. coast. She should be in decent enough shape, though, to get there. Nothing was really close to sinking. Japanese deliberate attack at Wangkao. So the Japanese are launching a deliberate attack with 3 full infantry divisions. One of them looks like it's only at about half strength. This might have been the one that we drove back when it first moved into Wangkao and we counterattacked. But this guy, the 116th and the 39th, are in pretty good shape. We really don't have much in the way of strong defensive forces. The 14th Chinese Base Force is actually in good shape. It's just a small unit. And then the 100th Chinese Infantry Corps at 352 is the strongest unit on the map. But then we also have 4 corps here that are basically worthless. Fortunately, the Japanese didn't get a positive assault odd. Because they were attacking fortifications, even though they're only fortification level 1, the defenders get a bonus, which gives we basically doubled our defensive value. Which meant that the Japanese weren't able to get a preponderance of attack value to oversee that. So not only did they only get 1 to 2 assault odds, that means they didn't reduce the fort, and it means they took much heavier casualties than we did. Now, we did take 6 squads destroyed against their 4, so we lost more total units destroyed, but we only lost 42 disabled. They lost 105 disabled, so they're going to have to rest for a while to recover that. 6 non-combatant squads disabled. 1 engineer squad destroyed on both sides. They also had 8 disabled. We had none disabled. We lost 7 guns. 1 destroyed, 6 disabled. They lost 4 guns, but 3 of those were destroyed. Oh, wait, no, I'm reading these wrong. We lost 4 guns. They lost 7. We lost 1 engineer. They lost 1 and 8. So I think I got twisted up on the guns. Overall, they lost a lot more men. About 400 more casualties. 2 fewer destroyed, but a lot more disabled. And wait, I read that totally wrong. Our non-combatant squads lost a lot disabled, but our combat squads lost barely anything disabled. That's a really good result. Only 8 squads impacted for us, 109 combatant squads impacted for him. That's a big setback. So, hurrah, or huzzah, or whatever. You're right, I could record the chat in a small screen and then overlay it into the corner of the game. That is an option. It's not a bad idea, J Street. I'm not recording the chat right now, but I should consider that. Meanwhile, in the northern part of the Malay Peninsula, the Japanese have started moving south, and they just launched an attack against the 3rd SSV Battalion, which is a blocking force of ours. Looks like they destroyed all 85 men. Not very much of a loss, but it does clear the road for him to Johor Bahru, which just expanded its fortifications to level 2. I think that's going to about do it for the turn. So you can see we're getting the production phase, supply movement phase, and we're going to start to see different units that are going to be populated on the map for us. So aircraft repair, supply, upgrading ships, air units, land units. I'm just going to read out what you see on the screen in front of you. The historical reader. All right. Come on. I guess I can hit X and fast forward through it. All right. Getting back into the game. First off, let's take a look at the intelligence report. You can see here no air-to-air casualties at all this turn. Nothing destroyed on the ground either. Nothing lost to flak. 3 ops losses on each side, so very light day for air action. We lost 2 Devastators to ops losses. He lost a Betty, a Nell, a Jake, and we lost a Buffalo. So not much going there. In terms of ships sunk last turn, nothing is claimed sunk last turn, so that's good to know. In terms of top pilots, we didn't lose any of our top pilots. Well, I think the highest, we've got 1 pilot with 4 kills who's wounded, but everybody else with 4 kills or more is fine and operational. All their fatigue is very low as well. Interesting, the wounded guy is very high fatigue. We lost 1 pilot killed last turn for a total of 107 so far in this campaign. 1 pilot wounded. That brings us to 117 wounded. And we have 14 MIA, presumed missing as POWs. Let's see. Where should we look first? I guess we can take a look at the Malay Theater, the Malayan Peninsula. And we can see here that with the defeat of our troops here, he has a clear road south to Kuala Lumpur, and then even beyond that down to Malacca, and down from there down to Johor Bahru. Johor Bahru is really where we're is our first tripwire in the defensive chain. It's not intended to be a permanent stopping point, just sort of a temporary hold them for a little bit before you fall back to Singapore as you sort of finish up Singapore's defenses to give us a little bit more time to entrench in Singapore. Now, we do have the bulk of our infantry actually immersing right now, which is not a very strong force, only about 780 assault value there. You can see we're not attacking there because we haven't been able to draw sufficient supply north, and he's been reinforcing his troops here. So he's been bringing in small forces here. We don't have good intelligence on them, but it's about 4 small units, probably 4 guard units or SNLF forces. So something that we would be stronger than, but not something that we'd be able to defeat quickly. And if we did attack them, we would lose large numbers of casualties ourselves. And the problem is the way the game treats the Japanese forces when they're on the defensive in that sort of a scenario with their backs to the wall is you kind of have to like Pacific Island them where you wipe them out to the last man and they won't surrender, which means you lose even more men. And the troops we have here aren't particularly good on the offensive. So I'm kind of holding these guys in place as sort of a blocking force, and I'm going to start pulling them back to Johor Bahru very shortly, actually, to make sure that we get out ahead of any of his troops up here from the north arriving there. We'll surrender Mersing. It has no airfield right now, so it's going to take him time to build it up into one, probably before the campaign's over, or at least a month or so before he can really make it an effective airfield. So I'm not too worried about surrendering the city. The main thing I'm doing, the main reason I'm keeping these troops here is just keeping them here long enough so that he doesn't think, oh, it's going to be quicker to get to Singapore if I sea lift a large formation into Mersing and then march from there. I want to make him come the long way. And right now he's telling us 40, 80, 120 miles to Kuala Lumpur. And then from Kuala Lumpur, he has another 160 miles. So he's 280 miles to get to Johor Bahru, which should give us some time to plan a withdrawal out of Mersing. But we'll probably begin that withdrawal in a day or two, because with no opposition between us and them, they can move pretty quickly, especially if he has armor units, which I'm sure he does. Did I lose the Big E? No, I did not lose the Big E. I don't know why he named to save that. If we look at our ships sunk, we have not lost any. Nobody has lost any aircraft carriers yet. And the only battleships sunk so far, I don't believe the Congo. The Congo was not sunk. That's Fog of War. But we do know the Haruna was sunk, which is a Japanese battleship. We didn't even lose Force Z, so no carriers of any kind have been sunk. The only battleships sunk so far are Japanese battleships. And cruisers, we've lost the Houston and the Java, so we did lose 2 cruisers. But the Japanese have lost, I don't believe that they've lost the Maya either. We put a torpedo into the Maya here in the Gulf of Siam, another Mark 14, which actually worked. But just a single torpedo, so I doubt she's sunk. But we did sink the Kartori off the coast of Mersing. And then we're pretty sure, it hasn't reported it yet, but we're pretty sure we sank another Japanese light cruiser at Tarawa, based off of our carrier raid there. So he should have lost 2 light cruisers by now. We lost the Langley, which is not an aircraft carrier in this game. That's the only sort of quasi-aircraft carrier that we lost. It's an AV, so it is basically an aircraft tender. So it has like a short little flight deck here, but I don't think you can actually fly aircraft off of it. You have an aircraft capacity of 4, which I think means you can fly like float planes and stuff off it, but you don't actually have any aircraft you can really fly off of it. Again, it's an aircraft tender. You can probably move aircraft around quickly in it, but you can't actually really use it for anything of meaning. I mean, by this point in the war, though, Neuhauser, it was not an aircraft carrier. It was just aircraft ferry, if you will. They did not use the Langley as an aircraft carrier in this part of the war. Let's see. So we were talking about the Haruna, which we did sink. We did get one of our task forces here that had been part of the Battle of Mersing into Cape Town. So the battlecruiser Repulse has arrived at Cape Town. We can go ahead and disband this task force into the port, and then what we can do is we can actually go into the port and we can see what it's going to take to repair her. So let's go to just including warships here. We know we've got the battlecruiser Repulse. She has 24 system damage, 20 float, 25 engine, 20 major float, 16 major engine. It's going to take a while to repair her. I originally thought it would only take a month, but I actually think I'm pretty wrong on that. So if we move her into the shipyard at Cape Town, you can see here it's telling us 117 days to repair her. Even on critical, it's 117 days to repair her. So we're talking about 4 months that she's going to be out of commission in order to get repaired back up to full strength, which is going to kind of suck. She's a fast battleship. We don't really have many of those. A battle cruiser with radar, experienced crew. I'm happy she got out because we didn't lose too many points because, again, she was able to escape. But it's going to be frustrating to see her on the docks for 4 months. Nonetheless, better than being sunk. That's just political spin and propaganda. Neuhauser, no, just be quiet, okay? We didn't lose the Langley, all right? Or we did lose. She's not a carrier. Now, the weird thing is, despite the fact that Repulse is going to take forever to repair, if you look at this destroyer, 51 system damage, 31 float. I get it's a much smaller ship, but 8 days to repair? That seems a little bit like, those are ridiculous discrepancies there, which is kind of funny. And then the Scout needs to stand down, so it can repair. It can repair in 1 day. It only has 1 in 1. And then I think the Thanet can repair on its own without standing down in 1 day as well. So we're going to have, in about a week, we'll have 3 fully repaired destroyers, and we'll probably sail them back out to the Pacific. We've got some fuel coming in here from Cape Town. We've got some troops and equipment and supplies coming in toward Rangoon. Some anti-aircraft guns that were moving in from Cape Town. I'm trying to remember where those... I've got Is it these guys? We got heavy anti-aircraft guns coming into Batavia, which I may try and send up to Singapore to kind of knock out some of his aircraft. It's a small unit. It's worth losing a little bit of. And then we're also going to see if we can move these Hurricanes. So we've got one squadron of Hurricanes coming in, 24 of them. And what I may do is sort of unload them here in Oosthaven, rail them up to Palembang, and then airlift them to Singapore, because then we can get 24 modern fighters to Singapore to bolster the defenses there. Now, in Singapore, he did not bomb there this turn. We have 62 aircraft, 57 of them are ready. We have the majority of those being Buffaloes, but we do have about 20 P-40 Warhawks, most of those P-40Es, with the American forces that had been part of the Philippines. And then we've got the other aircraft, the other 37 or so are Buffaloes. It gives us 57 active fighter aircraft in these squadrons, which is definitely useful. We did have more. We pulled some of those out to Balikpapan, where we now have some 28 Allied fighters, 10 Buffaloes, and 18 P-40s as part of the Flying Tigers. We also have 2 Dutch Buffaloes, so we technically have 30 fighter aircraft here. And the reason we're doing that is we're trying to strip Balikpapan of oil. So it has about 39,000 fuel, 40,000 oil. We want to get that fuel out of Balikpapan so that it's not in his hands when it does eventually fall to him. So we did take a risk. We did speed in 2 tankers here, and we're going to go ahead and load these guys up with 10,000 fuel, and then as soon as they're loaded up with 10,000 fuel, we're going to order them to the east coast of Australia, where that fuel will then flow via the rail lines into the industry of Australia. That's 185 hexes. Would it be better to move to Perth? 185 versus 185, 104. 185, 104 versus Karen's is 185, 25. Yeah, so the 185, 104, actually, that's 62 hexes. In parentheses there, Perth is 53 hexes. So we'll go to Perth. Although I'm tempted to go to the East Coast anyway, because Perth has to transport the fuel over a very long rail line to the East Coast. And as you transport fuel over large numbers of hexes, you actually lose a lot in efficiency losses. So just something to be aware of. Meanwhile, we've got these other tankers that are kind of sitting out here. I don't know if I want to... Part of me wants to just kind of leave them here, sit here, put them into retirement, remain on station, and then as these guys get out of Balikpapan, then we can send these other tankers into Balikpapan and slowly kind of shuttle the fuel out. I like that better than making a run for Palembang. Making a run for Palembang is too risky because it's going to be within his air unit's range, and even if he doesn't attack us on the way in, he might attack heavily loaded tankers on the way out. I think the best way to limit Palembang, and there's no way we're going to be able to strip it totally of supplies. It's got over 300,000 fuel and oil. There's nothing I can do about that. He's going to get a rich prize when he takes it. It's producing over 1,000 fuel a turn anyway. But the only way I can really limit it is by pulling fuel out of Oosthaven, which slowly pulls fuel south from Palembang. So there's about 20,000 fuel there. You can see we've got about 16,000 loaded on these 3 tankers that are going to be going to Perth. And then we've got a few other forces here loading and whatnot at Oosthaven as well. All right, let's check in with the chat real quick. Singapore will not be my Alamo. No, my Alamo is going to be Bataan. So we only have about 149 assault value in Singapore right now. And then we've got another 115 in Johor Bahru. We do have some units that are a little bit beat up that they could replenish. So let's say we've got 300 assault value between the two. Then we've got about 780 at Mersing. So all told, we've got somewhere between 1,000 to 1,200 assault value. When you adjust for the number of divisions, that's about 3 Japanese divisions. The problem is the Japanese divisions assault with much higher efficiency and skill and experience than the Commonwealth forces at this stage in the war. So you're probably looking at like 600, really. So basically 2 Japanese divisions. Now, the equalizer with Singapore is that it's got level 3 forts and building and should be to level 4 before we have to deal with any attacks. Maybe even 5, but 5's a little bit ambitious. 4 should be doable. And so what that means is those assault values are going to really take a hit when he attacks fortifications, but he can wear it down over time. No, our real Alamo is going to be Bataan. So we can see Singapore, I'm bringing small amounts of supply in from Palembang. We've got 46,000 supply, but we do have a couple of units here. We've got 3,500 on this transport here at Munlok, and we just unloaded 2,000 from the Black Hawk, which is a destroyer tender, which shuttled 2,000 supplies in. So we've brought this up to 46 from about 40,000. Singapore would be a great place to put a ton of supply if I had more troops, but all of our reinforcements, including an entire British infantry division, I diverted to Burma and to India because I knew there was no way of holding it. So, for example, there were 3 British infantry brigades that were bound for Burma, part of the 18th British Infantry Division here, 448 assault value, good, not really good leadership actually, but good morale, moderate experience, high-quality troops that we diverted to India because I didn't want to just send a whole division to its death. So we diverted them there. We also diverted some brigades to Rangoon, so we've strengthened our force here at Rangoon and at Pegu as well. So we've got over 600 assault value in Burma there, and then we've got another almost 500 in India that we diverted that could have gone to Singapore, but I didn't think sending them to their certain death was worth it. Meanwhile, at Bataan, we've got over 1,700 assault value here. So Bataan, 1,700 assault value, and some units that have not good experience, decent morale for them. The 4th Marine Regiment is here with good experience and good morale. So you can see here we've got a very strong force at Bataan, over 1,700 assault value, over 288 engineers, 29 engineer vehicles, 20,000 infantry almost, with another 54,000 support troops, almost 1,000 artillery pieces. Bataan is our Alamo. And actually, speaking of Bataan, we had fought a battle at Clark Field just a few turns ago with 3 divisions that bloodily repulsed a Japanese attack on Clark Field by the skin of their teeth, and so we decided to pull out. Fortunately for us, he did not attack Clark Field last turn, and so we got some 300 assault value between some of these divisions. You can see these guys that say move here just arrived this turn. So we've got 160 value here between these 2 units that were set to move, and we also had a few other units that were set to combat, but when they're set to combat they can actually still move, they just move more slowly. So we did have about 300 additional assault value troops make it out of Clark Field. That does mean that Clark Field is doomed. We don't have any supply. We've got a handful of units there. They're all in the process pulling out. The only question is whether they get out before he attacks, and if they don't, some of them may be destroyed or some of them may just lose a little bit of cohesion, if you will. So we're withdrawing from Clark Field. The difference between, I guess, Singapore and Bataan is that Bataan is very shortly going to be isolated and bombarded. Singapore is not. The good thing is Bataan is much further toward the progress of level 4 forts. It's at 81%, which is about 4 or 5 days away from getting to level 4 fortifications. We'll get one of those days before he takes Clark Field. So let's say hypothetically he takes it next turn. We'll get 1 day there, and then we'll be at 3 or 4 days. And the march time between Clark and Bataan is about 3 days when you're set to march. So we should be able to get to level 4 before he arrives. Additionally, Clark Field, if we hit the level 1, we can see this LG here, or maybe it's JG. Yeah, it's JG, which means it's a jungle terrain. So in addition to the 4 fortifications, we also, if we go up here, we can say JG gives us a ×2 defensive value because it's jungle hex, which means that we get essentially a pretty big boost. Fortifications get a boost because they're in very defensible terrain. I did cede to the temptation to stream Northfield. Yes, this is an aberration. I do not normally do this because mainly I don't think I've got a ton to show this turn. I've kind of showed the situation in Singapore, shown the situation at Bataan and Clark Field. I don't really have a lot of orders to issue there. Those guys' orders are already in place, and they're already moving. What else do we want to do here? We do have this carrier formation here off the coast of Balikpapan. I kind of think I'm just going to keep them where they are for another turn or so. In the event that he comes south with his cruisers or whatnot, maybe we can react and try and get at him. We also have one ship here, one light cargo ship. It's carrying 1,700 supplies. He's probably going to die, but I'm going to try and sprint him in here to Tarkin to refuel at Tarkin and then see if we can get one last supply run into Bataan. Bataan's already at its max supply level. With its current base size, it can only support up to, 53,000 supplies before you start losing some to attrition, which means you can lose like up to 20% of it in a given turn. But an extra 2,000 supply might buy us a couple days worth of defense. I think it's worth the cost of a light transport, so we'll see if that works. Meanwhile, we've got our subs all here blocking the entrance to the Mascar Strait. A few other subs back here in the event that he wants to bring his carriers and cruisers back to play. We can see here that there's a cruiser task force here off the eastern coast of Mindanao that is moving northeast this direction. And then we've got another cruiser force here moving east this direction. And I think we saw his carriers somewhere around here. It might be one of these formations as well. You can see he has landed on the southern island of Mindanao. I don't really have anything I can do about that, unfortunately. Where did these guys come from? I'll try and get some supplies in from Balikpapan, but I don't think there's any way this patrol craft's going to make it. Okay, so that's the situation there. We're building up defenses in Java. Don't really need to show that. We're just kind of fortifying positions. Burma, nothing has changed. We're building fortifications at Rangoon. I think we're building them at Pegu as well. The problem is he can just easily bypass any of these positions, so it's kind of a waste of supply, but we've got plenty of supply. If we take a look north, we've got a couple of convoys here bringing some troops, and we also have some convoys here bringing some oil. We're bringing oil into India, where we're going to allow that oil to be turned into supplies in India, so that way we don't actually have to transport supplies, we just have to transport oil from Abadan to India. Meanwhile, we're still waiting for some of our ships to arrive on the eastern coast to start our shuttle runs of supplies of oil from the east coast to South Africa, and then from South Africa to Western Australia. Because, again, even if you were to cut our supply line from Eastern Australia, we do have Western Australia that we can easily supply from. So that's another thing. Not a lot going on over here. I'm kind of consolidating my troops that are on free HQs in San Diego so I can easily transport them out to other bases. I'm also trying to stockpile some of our prestige points. We have 475. I could theoretically turn the 2nd Marine Regiment into an unrestricted HQ so that we'd have an extra regiment of Marines to help defend the South Pacific. We probably will do that in the next couple of turns, but I want to keep those points just in case I need them. So what we're going to do is we're going to change it to strategic mode, which basically allows it to be moved efficiently onto a transport convoy. And then once that's done, that takes 2 days, then we'll look at re-headquartering it. Same for the 2nd Marine Tank Battalion, which is also here. They both have very high assault values. And then also the 2nd Marine Parachute Battalion is another good combat force. We don't need to touch the San Diego Harbor defenses. We're not moving those. And maybe some of these, I don't know about the port services units. Some of those need to stay in place so we've got the necessary naval support that we need to get them moving. Coastal Artillery Regiment, we'll move them to Strat. And San Diego Base Force will remain in combat because we're not moving them. Okay, so that's the situation there. Counterattacks? I mean, well, we just did one at Tarawa, so we did just bomb Tarawa. We also have a force moving north to Midway. So we've got some battleships here that are moving toward Midway. I probably should actually make sure that their routing orders are threat tolerance, absolute, and direct. So we can do that. This formation then is going to move to Midway. They're probably, about like a day away, 2 days away. And then we've got the Yorktown, which has just arrived in theater as well, which is kind of providing cover for them, and then we'll also be ordered to launch bombing raids on Midway as well. We've actually already targeted Midway with these air wings. Ideally, the aircraft arrive at the same time as the battleships, so that way we can bombard the hell out of it without them having too much warning. We do have 2 battleships in this formation. These guys were not badly damaged at Pearl Harbor at all, and so they are arriving, or they are in combat mode now. Yeah, I don't know about going straight to the home islands, J Street. It is an intriguing idea. I've tossed around the idea, and I may do it. I think it would be bold, but it could be a lot of fun. Like, what do you guys think if we sent 2 carriers up to the island of Hokkaido. Is that how you pronounce it? Hokkaido? I think it would be awesome if we could move like 2 carriers maybe up into the Curly Islands area, maybe position them like right here off the northeast coast of Hokkaido. We could then use them to bomb Sakura, which has an oil field. And then we could also bomb some of the industry at Torihara, or maybe even make a play for Sapporo. But I feel like the risk would be less if we moved into the sort of the Sea of Okhotsk and then bombed from there, because he's not going to have any real bases. These are just tiny little islands that there's no way he's been focusing on building anything up. And I know the game doesn't start with anything built up here. So if we moved like a force in here, I think it would be awesome to bomb these bases up here and maybe get bold and bomb Sapporo as well, which also has an oil field, light industry, heavy industry, or whatnot. But Torihara has very large amounts of resources and light industry that would be great to bomb. The same for the oil fields at Sakura. And I think it would be somewhat I don't think it would be that risky. So we could either move into the Sea of Okhotsk, or we could move here sort of between Hokkaido and the main island here down in Japan, and maybe just kind of hang out in this northern area and bomb convoys in this area. Presumably he's got large numbers of resource convoys moving back and forth, because you have to, as Japan in this game. But he doesn't really start off with much air units on the island of Hokkaido. So I don't think, well, this is probably way too close, because if the bulk of his air units are here in the south, at least the way the game starts. So unless he's moved a whole bunch north, that might be a little bit too risky. But the Sea of Okhotsk might be plausible. I doubt he's got much recon. I've even toyed with the idea of like, could we send a very small landing force on here and just probe, like maybe take some of these islands, take Shirishimajima, force him to make some amphibious responses. Because if we landed like an engineer combat battalion here, we could build this airfield up relatively quickly. It's a level 4 airfield. And then we could use it to put some medium and heavy bombers on there and just lay havoc on the northern coast of Japan. Not anything that would change the course of the war, but certainly something that would force him to allocate resources and time in an area that he doesn't want to. So I think landing at Shirishimajima with like an engineer regiment and then moving the carriers in here and bombing these areas and then quickly withdrawing would be incredibly bold, but also super intriguing and something I've been toying about. Not something we can do quite yet, but maybe in a week or so. I don't know. I think it'd be a lot of fun. It's a CV5 Yorktown J Street. The 5 has not been sunk yet. Well, J Street, I don't want to land. So like if I land, and I don't think this is the case for the Curly Islands or Sakhalin, but if I land on Japan itself, then what'll happen is he gets a whole bunch of free units that spawn. I don't think he gets free units for the Curly Islands or for the Sea of Okhotsk, but he does get free units for Japan being invaded. Basically like the idea of the National Guard being raised. But anyway, that's just an idea that I'm toying around with right now. So carriers. So the Yorktown's moving up this way toward Midway. The battleships are moving up toward Midway. Our other carrier formation here is to the southwest of Johnston Island. For whatever reason, the Saratoga is just making a beeline for Pearl Harbor all on her own. The Enterprise and the Lexington are not. They're actually refueling. And then they'll return to Pearl. I don't want to take that route, though. That seems like a bad idea if he's got submarines that way. So let's use waypoints. Let's move it down here. Just try and avoid where his subs are. I think if we move down here, we give a wide enough berth to go into Pearl. We bring our 3 carriers back to Pearl. They need a little bit of time to rest and refit, honestly. They're getting beat up a little bit. The Enterprise is 9 systems damage. Lexington's okay at 5, but 9's pretty high. Saratoga, on the other hand, she's just like, I'm done. I'm going home. She's only at 5 system damage, so she's in reasonable shape. But like 2 or 3 days in port wouldn't be a terrible idea. As these guys fall back here toward Pearl Harbor. North, the only drawback is he has to supply them, but supplying units would not be challenging at all on the home islands where all of his supply is made, basically. What the hell? Where are you guys going? How about you don't sail out there like a moron? It's a plan. Don't just like sail like, we're going to be like within 5 hexes of Japanese bases. It's a convoy with 76,000 supplies on the way to Australia. Don't mind us. Oh boy. Yeah, you need to meet this task force and refuel them. Okay, good. So you're going to do that, right? Yeah, okay. All right, so that was the carriers. We talked about sort of the south, or not, we talked about the carriers, we talked about Hawaii, we talked about our sort of mastermind plan. Battleships have arrived back in the U.S., so we've got these damaged battleships from the bombing of Pearl Harbor. We've got the Maryland, the West Virginia, and the Arizona, all arriving back in San Francisco. They're now safe from any Japanese submarines now that they've arrived back. And so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get these guys repaired. You can see the Maryland has very high system damage, but actually very low float damage or engine damage. My prediction is she'll be the quickest to repair. So move her into the shipyards, and you can see she can be ready in 72 days. So we'll set her to normal, which is 72 days. So basically 2.5 months, and the Maryland will be back out of the docks, and we'll have another battleship from Pearl Harbor by around March, back and ready to fight. Meanwhile, the Arizona is going to take a bit longer. If we set her to critical, she can take 88 days, so not too much longer, but still kind of long. And then we'll go ahead and we'll set the West Virginia here. She's going to take the longest. We'll just set her to normal, because if I set her all the way up to high, or, I mean, it takes a lot of time off, 100 days, but what is it? If I set everybody to critical, surely there's going to be an impact on the other ships, right? So if we go to repair now, yeah. So like this mess, it's like, oh, it's only going to take 104 days for the West Virginia, but now the Arizona and the Maryland are going to take forever, so I don't want that. So let's set this to low, actually, at 247. So that's going to take about 6 months, but what we'll do is once we get these 88 days out of the way, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to just kind of set the other one to sort of a different triage of length. So honestly, I kind of wonder if we're better off like moving these guys around so they're not all in the same shipyards. Shit. That's probably the best thing to do. Do I have to... Oh, I gotta wait 3 days for her to be ready again. I may go back in the save, guys, and modify that. But essentially, I'm going to move different battleships to different ports, just so we can speed things along. We'll keep 2 of them here. We'll keep 2 at San Francisco, because I think we can repair them relatively quickly. 160 days still, really? Huh. So we'll set it to high. That's 133. And this is still 72. So in about 6 months, we can get 2 battleships repaired out of San Francisco. But that'll go a little bit quicker, because once the Maryland's out, then we can move the Arizona up to critical, which will speed her up. You can see here that we've used about 64,000 of the potential 140,000 capacity, but depending on the repair priority you set, it changes sort of your capacity capabilities. Meanwhile, the other battleships on the way back to San Diego is the USS Pennsylvania. She's moving as quickly as she can. She has a lot of damage, so she's gonna take a while to repair when she's back too. Do I receive any good new ships over the next few days? Next few days, I don't know. Let's take a look here. If we go to our ship availability and we go to ETA, we can see here that we get a cruiser mine layer, the Abdiel, at Trincomalee in the Indian Ocean tomorrow. We get several cargo ships in about 2 days. We get the battleship Royal Sovereign in about a week. We get the heavy cruiser in about a week, the Dorsetshire. We get the Clark, the Terjerk Heads, the Sperry. So we get a bunch of submarines, and some destroyers in about a week. 6 days from now, we get a lot of fucking ships. Look at all those guys. By the way, you guys, I know some of you have been like, oh my goodness, XTRG submarines are doing so much damage. Look at all of these cargo ships that we get in 6 days. Just 6 days. That's like 20 cargo, 25 cargo ships. It's like everything he's sunk already just instantly gets replaced in 6 days, basically. So I'm not that worried about his cargo ship sinkings. We get the carrier Indomitable in 8 days. A British submarine, the Truant, in 8 days as well, which is actually going to be worth its weight in gold because they have good torpedoes. And then in about 2 weeks, we get the New Mexico and the Mississippi, some more destroyers, and lo and behold, a whole lot more cargo ships. So we get quite a few ships coming up here in the next week or so. Not a lot in the next few days, but in about a week, we'll get a bunch. So again. YGBSM, thank you for the tip there. I'll have to check that out. The manage ships button under the repair option. Okay. Yep. No, I'm aware. I know that they built the ships so fast that they can't sink them faster than they get sunk. I mean, it's just an absurd amount of frickin' cargo ships that we get to us. The one shortage that we do have from a shipping perspective, outside of like obvious like aircraft carriers, like, oh my god, just look at all these ships. But the one exception really to having a surplus of ships is tankers. In order to supply Australia, you need a lot of fucking tankers to move and operate your ships forward. That's the one area that we end up getting a lot in like 1943, but until 1943 we don't really. So we kind of have largely what we start with, and then maybe like 10 or 15 more tankers. So that's the one area that we kind of are a little bit short in addition to carriers, obviously. Battleships, within about 40 days, we'll have a bunch more. Inside a little bit over a month, we'll have another 7, which are probably about double or more our current standing battle fleet. Speaking of battleships, the Prince of Wales is still on the way back to Cape Town. She has not sunk yet. She is right here. Yes. She is at 51 float, 38 engine, 21 system, so she's going to be out of action for a long time, maybe even a year when she does get back. But she hasn't been sunk at least, so that's good. And she's going to take a while to get back there. She's going to take like 2, 3, 4 weeks to get back to Cape Town at her current speed, but at least she's safe. Okay, so that being said, what else haven't we looked at? Australia and the South Pacific, I guess. So we already kind of looked at the one convoy that's heading toward Pago Pago. We do have several other ships here. We've got way more ships here at Pago that are unloading than we have dock space for. So you can see here we've got this replenishment task force, which is actually completely empty. We're going to go ahead and disband and allow them to work on their system damage. We have one anti-submarine warfare patrol, which we're going to keep on station, actually 2 of them with destroyers and whatnot. We have one cargo task force, which is almost done unloading. Only about 18% left on the Examiner. She's got some fuel and some supplies that she's unloading. She is docked at the harbor because we can fit her at the harbor. We have one transport task force, which we cannot fit at the harbor, which is still unloading remnants of the 34th Infantry Regiment and some supply there. We have an air transport task force, which brought in some fighters and is also unloading cargo, again, off the docks, so super slow and inefficient. We have some tankers here, which just barely started unloading. You can see they have a lot of fuel on board, but they have basically no way to dock and unload it because Pago Pago's port facilities are too small for everything I'm trying to do. With that being said, it is the right anchor, it is the right flank in our Fiji line, so it's important that we strengthen it as best we can. This task force actually carried in the Marine Regiment, and they're more or less done unloading and will be leaving soon. And then this cargo task force, I don't know what they brought, but they're unloading something also too. So you can see here we were up to 21,000 supplies at Pago and about 1,300 fuel. That fuel is going to be worth its weight in gold. We've got some ships that definitely need the fuel. None of those apparently. But we do have quite a few ships that need fuel. Same situation at Suva. We have no fuel. We've got a reasonable amount of supply, but no fuel at Suva. The fortifications there are strengthening. What are we up to now in terms of Suva fortifications? Level 3 fort up to 41% on the way to level 4. Pago is at level 2 on the way to level 3. Its airfield capacity is about to expand as well. Pago now has 18 P-40B Warhawks to guard the base. Meanwhile, Suva has the bulk of the air forces with about 30 fighters and then about 35 dive bombers available to it at the moment. Actually 36 if you include the Vincents. And then a few B-17s as well. The airfield's too small at the moment. It's expanding to level 4. It's currently at 3. But when it does expand, eventually we'll be able to bomb Luganville or even Comac with our B-17s. So that'll be nice. Nadi is currently, I think, level 2 fortifications. Just got there on the way to level 3. She also has a relatively strong defense force here. A bunch of Australian infantry brigades. About 300 assault value here. Versus about 289 at Suva. The lower number in Suva is made up for the fact that the 8th New Zealand Brigade and the 164th American Infantry Regiment are both regular units with better experience. So the New Zealand Brigade has 40 experience, so not that great, but they're regular troops. The American unit has 40 experience as well, so not that great, but again, they're regular troops. The Australian 1st has 40, and they're militia. The 9th has 40, and they're militia. Oh, God, these guys all have 40. No one has more than 40. Oh, these guys have 30. That's great. That's even better. But nonetheless, it is what it is. Comac, we've got the one Indian brigade that we moved. These guys were also bound for Singapore, so they've just sort of found a separate place to die, I guess. They're currently... I should set them to combat. They're currently chilling here at Comac. I don't want them to bombard, so we'll set them to defend. And, so they're kind of holding these Japanese troops that are landing in place for the moment. Comac currently has a level 1 fort working on level 2, but probably won't ever get there. And then Nomaya is a little bit weak, only 171 assault value, but they are building fortifications. They do have coastal guns that should help prevent an actual outright landing, and they're level 2 forts working on level 3. Militia just makes them less effective. Mexicans. Are we working on building fortifications here? Because we really should be. Like, I don't know if we should set every facility on the Australian coast to build forts, but if he is going for a 42 victory, part of me says that means he's probably going to go for a landing in Australia. And it burns a lot of supplies to build forts, but kind of think we need to. At least where we have troops. Just say Mex. Okay. All right. Thanks, Mex. Sydney. I just don't think there's any way he can do this anytime soon, but I guess it's a good idea to build up fortifications now because they take, if I can get to level 8 or 9, that'll make his life a lot harder. We've got some convoys moving around. I've got these cruisers over here that I've kind of been toying with moving. I don't know if I want to race into Comac. That seems risky. Tanker, eh? What if we moved to Espírito Santos? What if we just flanked his entire operation and moved here? Move down through Nomaya, swing north to Espírito, and then sprint west back to Australia. Don't have enough fuel. It's an intriguing idea. Could ravage his supply lines if these are really supply convoys. But it would put 3 heavy cruisers and 2 light cruisers and some very good destroyers at serious risk if we did that. I don't think the West Coast is a feasible option for MJ Street. That should be safe. We have an absurd amount of troops on the West Coast compared to what he could possibly bring there. Just look at San Francisco with 477 assault value, a motorized infantry division, which has a lot of mechanized units and a ton of artillery. If we move down here, we've got at Camp, whatever this is, San Luis Obispo, another 200. Los Angeles has another 200, and we get more units as time goes on. There's another 250 here, and even though these are all restricted, they can all be moved around within the American West Coast. Almost 1,000 just at Tacoma, and again, none of these troops, like I said, that some units, because they're not very good, kind of you get a discount when you attack them because they're not very good. but not American units. American units typically are very good. And then plus you could always bring in some of these Australian units, or not Australian, some of these Canadian units as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of strength in the American West Coast, and that's not even counting the massive amounts of air power that are in the region as well. Just not something I'm too worried about in terms of him invading. Although if he wants to invade, he'd be welcome to. Yeah, not worried about Japanese incendiary bomb balloons. Those have really no effect. I'm really tempted to move this task force up here to Espiritu Santos and see what happens. I think they'll die. That's my concern. Like, is losing 3 cruisers worth it if I can ravage a convoy? I don't know. Okay, let's say we flank him to Brisbane, which I do have enough fuel for. We'll use the waypoint here to go to Espiritu Santo. How much fuel does that take? So they probably do it, because it uses up more fuel than they have, but we only need to sprint them for a day or two. 2 days sprint maybe, and then the 3rd day they just move slow. I don't know. I do like the idea. It is a super bold move. It could be foolish. But if he's got tankers there, oh, so tempting. I mean, we knew his carrier battle group was in the region, but I think they're moving north. I don't know if they've gotten to truck or not. By the way, we should totally check on our submarines here. The Sea Dragon is where? Almost to Australia. The Pike headed toward Australia. The Gertrude Kellogg took a lot of damage. Where is she? Oh, she's on her way back to Cape Town. Okay. Mariposa, she's there. The Pompano, is she the one who took the damage last turn? Yeah. All right, so we're going to have her pull back to Pearl Harbor. That's quite a bit of damage to take. And then let's just filter by ships or subs. So the where is it? The Sturgeon. Sturgeon should also retreat. All right, where is she going to pull back to? I guess Batavia maybe? Or actually Singapore wouldn't be a terrible idea. It's got dockyards that can repair her. So we'll pull her back to Singapore. So the Sturgeon's pulling back to Singapore. The Pickerel, where is she right now? She's already headed back to base. The S-36 also headed back to base. Pompano also headed back to base. Okay, so I think we've got all the subs that were damaged on their way back. Yeah, YGB, that's kind of my thought. Is like, if I can give him a bit of a bloody nose and make him think maybe I'm not safe advancing so far so fast, then it's worth it. And at the end of the day, if I lose 3 heavy cruisers and a couple of light cruisers, like, yeah, it could be the Battle of Savo Island, but I'm getting plenty of replacements. The only thing that gives me a little bit of pause is the Australia and the how do you pronounce it? Canberra are both radar ships, and not all of my ships have radar yet. And so the New Orleans, for example, doesn't have radar. So these two guys have air search radars. I guess they don't have surface search. But these guys are experienced. They're level 63 daytime combat, 63 nighttime combat for the Australia. These are good units fighting at night and at day. And I don't have a lot of those. But they're not going to arrive at night. They're going to arrive during the day. So we'll see. I'll probably do some soul searching and maybe come back and change this order between now and sending the turn in. So I guess you have to see the replay to see if we do it or not. But honestly, guys, like, I know I didn't do a lot. This is a pretty quick turn, just kind of a lot of me going around and pointing things out. But I think that's going to do it for this episode, and I think that's probably going to about do it for the turn. I don't have a lot of things to do Again, we've got a lot of supply convoys or whatnot. These guys are going down here to New Zealand. We've got a lot of supply convoys and different units that are in motion. But I don't really... I don't know. I don't have a lot to say. I don't have a lot to do this turn. So I guess what I would ask, and let's go ahead and check the signals intelligence. Engineers... The 317th Medium Field Artillery is located on transports and moving to Luganville. So who knows where, but Luganville's up here. That's Espiritu Santo. So that means they've got artillery moving to Espiritu Santo. Which means he's obviously, planning to stay there. I don't have a lot of other information here. So we know he's reinforcing his position at Espiritu Santo. It could be this task force too, which again makes it more appealing to try and attack them. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens here. Do I want to... The only thing is, are they going to pick me up? What I don't know is, if these guys are moving at night, can the Japanese detect and react to us if we're moving at night? I hope not. But I don't really know. Because, if he does have a blocking force, odds are it's at Comac. It can't just be those two cruisers, right? He didn't just move... Because he had regular cargo ships here a turn ago. I don't know. We'll have to see. We've got a pretty good commander in charge of this task force, too. 58 inspiration, or 63 inspiration, 58 leadership. Captain Richard Connolly. Is he commander of the... But, anyway. Anyway, guys, I think that's going to do it for tonight. I'm going to head to bed, and we'll take a look and see what happens on this in the next couple of days. But in the next day or two, look for a stream of either U-Boat or Imperator. We'll see which. And then in the not-too-distant future, Rule the Waves is coming out in about 2.5 weeks. Yeah? Is it 2.5? Oh, it's about 2 weeks. No, is it even 2? Does it come out the 17th? I think it comes out May 17th, so I think we're 9 days away. So we'll be playing and probably streaming a lot of that when it comes out as well. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in, and until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out.